Evening, Collie. How are you? Evening, Collie. Can you hear me?
Hello, is anyone speaking? I can't hear anyone.
I can hear you, Collie.
Suzanne, can you hear me?
I can hear you, Collie. How are you?
I can't hear anything.
Oh, let me see. Let me see if my mic is on. No, you can't hear me?
Your mic is on, Suzanne, and I can hear
Okay.
Molly, but I don't think she can hear us.
Huh. Hi, Robin. Kelly, you have your volume up?
I can't hear. Can you hear me, Suzanne?
I can hear you.
I don't hear a sound.
Check. Oh, here. Let me call you.
Hello.
Hi, Kelly. Make sure your microphone, your volume is turned up because we can hear each other. Robin just asked me, said she could hear me. We can hear you, but you're not seeming to hear us for whatever reason. So,
Okay, let's turn.
Clicking on the chat, right? There was a chat. I'm just clicking on that.
Okay,
Questions, right?
it's on 100%.
As far
Can you
as
hear
we
me?
know. Yes, or the
Well,
Q&A,
just a second.
because didn't he
I'm
say?
hearing
the
you with
Q&A?
my ears.
So there's no questions.
Okay, now speak.
can you
Suzanne?
hear me?
You might
Can you
have,
hear
No, I
me?
can't hear a sound.
Go to the microphone and, are you still on the phone? Go to your microphone on the bottom and see if, click on that,
is it on?
your audio.
It doesn't have-
Speak now, see if I can hear you.
Okay. Can you hear me?
Yes, now I can hear you.
Okay, perfect. All right, sounds
See, it
great.
doesn't show.
You just hold a little microphone for you.
Hmm.
You're not muted. Here we go. Perfect.
Hi, Dan.
Hi, Susan. Suzanne.
There's a chat up in the corner down on chat there. So maybe when we start the meeting, that basically asks how we submit questions, but I think now they get it.
Question and answer. So Joanne wants to have it in the question and answer part, not the chat part, if we can.
Yeah, these are, I think that I may, at the beginning of the meeting, explain to them, that they are going to be questions that are going to be read, that they're not
Yeah,
going.
nope, that's all written down.
Yeah, okay, you got it all. Okay,
I got it all. But we're going to use the question and answer form, not the chat.
correct. So Nina, one thing Nina's asking, so our audience won't be seen or heard, but they will be able to participate in public comment through writing their questions in.
Correct. And Suzanne,
Evening, everybody. Nice to see all of you.
I believe that you
Oh,
can
Michael.
either do the chat, or I believe they can do the Q&A down at the bottom.
I think the
I
preference
do,
is
I do
Q&A.
know that everything pops up on the chat, so it's up to them to your
Well, you know what? It's probably better to pick one thing.
Question and answer would probably be easier.
Yeah, so the question and answer would be where they would put those in then.
Yep, that's
Um,
fine.
Okay, and that way you're not trying to scramble if there's something that you're trying to document also.
Right.
Point out, well, the president also said, confirming some of our reporting from earlier today, that he is willing to take executive action, and I would.
Robin, is Joanne going to be putting, oh, never mind. I do need it for the resolutions. I was going to say, I don't know if I needed the other computer with board book up, but I think I do.
Seven o'clock. All right. Ready to start? Before I start though, I'd like to make just a couple comments. I'd like to thank everyone for coming here tonight in hopes of gathering additional information regarding our back to school plan. Also, I'd like to thank the administration and staff for their diligent work on this plan for the past several months, even during their summer vacation. The dedication of our task force members is impressive. This has been a cumbersome process to follow with lots of moving targets, and everyone's patience has been greatly appreciated. We decided to make this meeting virtual, even though the last meeting we had was in person, due to the community interest and the inability to adequately social distance with the possible attendees. We decided to go back to virtual for the safety of our viewers. This will allow all interested parties to have access to the information and the meeting details firsthand. This is a special meeting for the board, not a regularly scheduled meeting, to view the current plan, to give feedback and ask questions. This is the first time the board is hearing of this information, just like you. The board and administration have been clear that the safety of our students and staff is the utmost importance, as well as meeting the needs of the various families in our district. We have never been a one-size-fits-all district or been complacent to the bare minimums of safety of our students and employees. We care about your kids. There's a public comment component at the beginning of the meeting, and we encourage any comments. But please keep in mind that this is not a question and answer forum. We will not be answering any questions from the public tonight. This is not the time for questions concerning the back to school plan because we are just seeing the plan for the first time tonight. The board has to see the presentation before it can formulate where we go from here. We can then clarify, question, understand, and then next week we plan on voting for this plan. Let me repeat, we are not voting on this plan tonight. If this plan is accepted by the board, the administration will then work on details. The board will only be voting on the vision. The administration is left up for the details to the administration. We will continue to do our best to gather questions and give updated, accurate information as these details roll out. I would urge you to email further questions and concerns to the superintendent so that the factual information continues to be disseminated through the community instead of through false speculations and misguided rumors. If you have comments, please use the question and answer area on the Zoom. Type your comments there. Please state your name and your address for the record. These comments will be going to Robin, our superintendent's administrative assistant. She'll be reading them off to all of us. Does anybody else have any comments before we get started?
Hey, Dan, it's Kelly. I just think it's important for everybody to understand that what we're hearing tonight is the strategy and vision about going back to school, and then the tactical and how we're going to execute that plan once the board approves it will be subsequent to what we're hearing tonight. So tonight's the vision versus all the tactical details.
Well put. Thank you for that.
Great, Kelly. Good point.
And on that, I want to call this meeting to order. Can I have approval of the agenda, please?
So moved.
Support.
Second?
Support.
Support of movement and a second. All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carried. Next, we'll go up to the public participation. Robin, what do we have here?
From Nikki Lilgy.
Okay.
She says, how will IEP and 504 plans be managed for virtual learners? Will fifth graders be on the middle school schedule and bus route? How will the second grade split be determined between the two schools? What is the plan in the secondary elementary levels if someone tests positive? How will lunch be handled in the middle school? How will students start off the school year being as they didn't have much work learning for the last 3 months of the prior school year? Will they pick up where they left off in March? Will September be a month of trying to jam in / teach what was missed?
All right. Pass those all on to the superintendent, and after we hear a presentation, she can look those over and get information back to the community. What else do we have?
From Saba Kosor. How will band be handled at the middle school? These kids will not be able to wear a mask while playing instruments, and flute, for example, could be unsafe as air is blowing on people around the player. How will they safely have band class? Another question from Nikki Lilgy. Can we purchase our children bins to keep their own supplies in? I do not want my child sharing supplies. I'm happy to donate extra for those who need, but all children should have their own things. Also, what is the protocol for kids who cannot tolerate mask wearing all day long at any level and experience anxiety throughout the day? If we want our elementary child to wear a mask beyond the 14-day guideline, will that be supported? What virtual learning platform will be used for elementary kids? What is being done to address the potential for aerosol transmissions? Are airflow rates being measured in each classroom? What rating are air filters used in school HVAC systems? To prevent aerosol transmissions, filters should be MERV 13 or higher. These are air quality air filters, and aspire to meet or exceed ASHRAE, the professional society that provides HVAC guidance and standards. Do our HVAC systems have the ability to adjust how much outside air is pulled into the system? Increasing outside air intake would dilute the airborne virus. I understand this is less energy efficient than recirculating inside air, but would help keep everyone healthy. Also, has a UV sanitizer for the HVAC chiller system been considered? If I want to buy a properly sized HEPA filter for my child's classroom and donate it and a year's supply of filters, would it be accepted by the district and used in my child's classroom for the duration of the year? If the country moves back to a level 3 and we go to all virtual, will the school year be delayed to allow for additional training to ensure the best possible distant learning environment for our kids? From Tracy Pierce. With some local school districts deciding to start with online only format, will GI be considering this option? Another from Ms. Lilgy. Are any electives being canceled for the middle school or high school? Is there going to be kindergarten roundup before school year starts? With Southgate schools announcing going to virtual learning, will GI change direction and do the same thing? From Amy Brown. First, let me say that I appreciate the time and care for the staff, students that plan currently reflects. I have 3 children in the district, 2 at high school and 1 at the middle school. My oldest son is a senior. I ask that the district board consider allowing each class of students to attend as a cohort. No matter how cohorts are chosen, half of each building will be attending on the red day and half on the other day. For example, seniors and sophomores would attend the Monday, Tuesday, every other Wednesday, while freshmen and juniors would attend the other cohort. A huge proponent of the Return to Learn plan is the importance of our students' social and emotional learning by allowing each class to remain together. Peers are with one another, and the senior class has the last opportunity to complete their final year together. Thank you for your consideration. Erin Galindo, how will online classes be taught for high school? Okay, there's no question there. Nina Llewellyn, what is the training being received by teachers on virtual learning technology? What has the district spent their CARES money on? What do we expect teachers will have to pay for out of pocket? Christian Seamus, how will the school district handle situations when teachers contract COVID? Do we have an adequate number of qualified substitutes lined up? And how will they be trained in virtual learning once a class goes into quarantine? Nikki Lilligy, thank you for reading the parent-sourced questions I submitted. I appreciate the work and care the GITS team has put into keeping us safe and learning this year. Nina Llewellyn, what additional benefits will teachers receive if they contract COVID-19? And the last one is, at least for now, is can we develop a safe route for middle schoolers and 5th graders to walk or bike home, given safety concerns of busing during COVID? See, one more. From Melanie Elliott, high school juniors and seniors, career tech students invest 3 credit hours for technical training such as health career, mechatronics, welding, cosmetology, etc. At other high schools and colleges, how will career tech classes be handled? Stacy Damon, will there be additional help office hours for those high school students that are taking AP classes this year? Val Tomich, have teachers been asked what they want or are able to do? Has the district obtained the PPE or cleaning materials? Nina Llewellyn, can the district meet the requirements and recommendations the governor has outlined in the Return to School roadmap? Will 5th graders start and stop at the same time as middle schoolers? Heather Burwald, what will the secondary students be doing on the days that they are at home? Will they be part of a class via Zoom? Christian Seamus, how will the district maintain safe social distancing at the high school, middle school, when kids have to change classes? Nikki Lilgy, will board meetings continue to be offered via Zoom for the foreseeable future as long as we are dealing with COVID so more parents can participate? Thanks. I think that is it.
So all good questions, and we can save a lot of those questions for the presentation because I think some of those are going to be answered. Anyone that's not answering the presentation, we passed on to the superintendent's office and can be put in the question and answer forum. And certainly if you have more additional questions, you can certainly just email them straight to the superintendent's office. This is again a presentation tonight. This isn't necessarily the time for questions before we even hear the presentation. So if there's any more comments, that's fine. If not, let's move on to the presentation and see if we can see what Joanne has to say. Slarikich, you're up to bat.
Okay, okay, we're going to get the presentation on. Hold on one thing, where's the, okay, there it is. Okay, thank you and good evening. Thank you, Kelly, for stating that so nicely. This is the vision. This is the proposed plan that will be presented tonight. The board has not seen this. This is their first opportunity. They will have a week to respond, and then we will be coming back next week for the board to approve a plan. Some things may change after this presentation, so I just want to keep that in mind. But this is just the vision. The questions tonight from the parents were great questions. Some may be in the frequently asked question document. We will continue to update that. But those are the details. Many of those details will come from the building principals. We can't move forward with details until we have a plan that has been approved by the board. So with that being said, I will just begin the presentation. I don't know how the board, if you want to stop and ask questions during, if you'd like me to stop at any time. Otherwise, we can ask questions at the end. Executive Order 2020-142. The governor provided us with a structure to support all schools in Michigan as they plan to return to school in the fall. We must adopt the COVID preparedness response plan. We must have the plan approved by all local boards of education, and then by the 15th of August. And then by the 17th, the Wayne County RESA will take our plan along with all of the other 36 plans in the state, and they will forward them to the Michigan Department of Education and the state treasury. Without an approved plan, you will not receive your state funding. Quick timeline to tell you how we got to this day today. Back in mid-May, we knew as administrators that starting school in the fall was going to be a challenge as we saw COVID cases kind of rise and the data showing that, you know, things will look different, things will have to look different. We began meeting, discussing just concerns that we had as an administrative team. And in early June, the Wayne County superintendents put together a toolkit. And the toolkit was divided into areas, and those areas, there were questions and concerns to consider what you would do if you're trying to return to school. Basically, what are some concerns that we would face if we're bringing back face-to-face instruction? Taking that toolkit, which was a huge document, we decided that a district task force was needed because each of the sections of the document reflected the different departments. So we put together a task force, and I'll talk about that in a little bit. And they began meeting in June and July, and they met for almost a month before the governor came out with her roadmap, to plan for the roadmap. So the goal of the task force was to really look at the concerns, look at the questions, what are some things that we really need to consider? And that once they put that together, then the plan was developed. And then we developed a plan, and here we are this evening. The task force was made up of 49 people, principals, administrators, secretaries. We have teachers. And I asked Rick, I believe I have 13 or 14 people on the task force who are actually parents in the district. And I will tell you, several of them had said to me, it was difficult not putting my parent hat on as we talked about some of these concerns and some of these recommendations and some of the things that we had to face. But at the same time, it was important that we had their input as parents in the school district. We had a certified respiratory therapist who happens to be one of our CTE teachers, who works also in a hospital. So she saw firsthand what the effects of COVID have done. So every district or every building, every department was represented in this plan, and I think it's time to publicly thank those people. They gave up their summer, and some of them are still working on putting together the template that the board will receive tomorrow. And then once the board approves a plan, then we hit the ground running with the details and working that all out. The task force was divided into 8 areas: elementary learning committee, we had a secondary learning committee, health and safety committee, Food service, transportation, facilities, and the CDC guidelines, mental health committee, and the extracurricular committee. Resources that we looked at. We have ongoing guidance from the Center of Disease Control. We have guidance from the Michigan Department of Health and Human Services, Michigan Department of Ed, Wayne County Health Department. We have the Return to School Roadmap that was put together by the Governor's Advisory Council, and then the Michigan Safe Start Plan. Just a quick review, and I'm sure many of you have heard this before. The Michigan Safe Start has phases are 1 through 6. So phases 1 through 3, there is no person instruction. It is remote only. It will be included in our template, our plan, which was already approved by the state when we did our continuing learning plan last spring, but is much more robust because this is new information presented to students, new curriculum. It will be counted, it will be graded, credit will be given. But if we were to start in a phase 1, 2, or 3, or we move to a phase 1, 2, or 3, we would be remote only with a more robust plan, similar to what we did in the spring. Phase 4, which we are currently in, it's an in-person instruction, is permitted with required safety protocols. If we are moved to a phase 5, schools can open for in-person instruction, and there are minimal required protocols. And in phase 6, we're post-pandemic, and that means we've returned to in-person with no safety protocols, and things are back to normal. So in the phase 4, safe return to school, we have requirements in the plan that we must adhere to. We must be able to do these things if we are going to open face-to-face. There are requirements, there are highly recommended, or I think they use the word strongly recommended, and then there are recommended. So there are 3 different levels of factors to consider. The first is the personal protection equipment. Facial coverings must be worn by all staff except for meals. That is right in the document. Pre-K and special education teachers should consider wearing clear masks. We have purchased those for the staff to use because we know how important it is when you're teaching, when you're working as a speech teacher, or you're working with young children, teaching to read, teaching phonics, things of that nature. If you wear a homemade covering, it has to be washed daily. Disposable face coverings must be disposed of at the end of the day. We've gone as far as buying certain containers that when you walk out of the building, you can throw your mask in. All pre-K through 12th graders, when they are in hallways, coming in the building, leaving the building, in the hallways, they must wear a mask in all common areas. And all students in grades K through 5 must wear their facial coverings unless they remain in their class throughout the day, which is referred to as a cohort group, and do not come into close contact with students from another class. One of the concerns, overwhelmingly in our survey results, parents want students to return face-to-face, but there's also an overwhelming feedback I've received from parents that they want students wearing masks. So it is not a requirement for K through 5 to wear them, but one of the things that we have to follow is the Wayne County Health Department guidelines, and they are being provided to us, and their recommendation is that students wear, in K through 5, wear facial coverings. So as a compromise to make staff and parents feel safer and administration, we are going to require that the first 2 weeks of school, kindergarten through 5th graders, or pre-K, young 5th through 5th graders, wear their masks for 2 weeks. We will evaluate after 14 days, which would take us to approximately September 21st. We will evaluate if we have had no exposure in the classrooms or no active cases. Then we will look at maybe laxing up that requirement. But I think it's important that students start off with those masks. And I think parents will feel safer, and staff will certainly feel safer if we have those, if students are wearing those. Hygiene. proper adequate supplies to support healthy hygiene behaviors. I have approved so far at least $75,000 in purchases for PPE equipment that range anywhere from our masks to, we have our industrial sprayers to clean at the end of the days. We have bought plexiglass shields. We have purchased hand sanitizer. There's a list goes on of things that we have already purchased. The other thing is to teach and enforce hand washing with soap and water for at least 20 minutes a day. Those are requirements. Interestingly enough, in the spacing, movement, and access, there are no requirements. So we are going, but we think it's very important. We are bringing students back face to face. We are bringing staff back into the buildings. We are going to follow the strongly recommended practices, spacing desks at least 6 feet apart. At the high school, when Audrey, Ms. Kalis, the curriculum director, will go on to explain the learning component of this plan. She will explain the 6 feet apart in the classrooms at the secondary level. When feasible, face the desks in the same direction. Teachers should distance themselves from students as much as possible. This is a difficult one for all of us. Family members and other guests will not be allowed in school buildings except under extenuating circumstances. We are trying to mitigate the spread of the virus by eliminating the number of outsiders that come into the building. And that is strongly recommended. And then we have purchased postage signs for proper distancing, hand hygiene techniques, screening stations. There will be X's for the students on how to social distance when you're in the hallways, arrows using one side of the hall or the other, and if appropriate to go around, making hallways one way. There are many different signages that will be put up to support the keeping us safe. Screening students and staff. This is what I talked about with the health department. We must cooperate with the local public health department regarding implementing protocols for screening students and staff. We are recommending that all students be screened as they enter the building every day. The details of that have not worked out because every building is a little bit different. So once we have an approved plan, then we will work out the details of how that screening will look. We currently have and have had in place since May protocols for when staff return. We are temped, we fill out our form every day that we come in, and we must wear our masks and stay 6 feet apart. So we will just continue that as teachers and support staff come back into the building. Testing protocols for students, staff, and responding to COVID cases. The school must cooperate with local public health department regarding how we implement the protocols for screening students and staff. This is probably the #1 question that I've received is how will I be notified or what will be done if a student is exposed, a teacher comes down with COVID, a student is diagnosed with COVID, a family member, how does that work? The health department has put together a virtual binder for us. It's still in draft form, it still has to be approved, but they will be providing each scenario. So there will be a separate scenario for each of the things that I just mentioned and how that will be handled. And we will share that in a document with parents. So parents know before school starts, if someone in my child's class has been exposed, what does that mean for my child? If the teacher contracts COVID, what does that mean for my child and how is that handled? One of the important things to remember is that if a student in the district or a staff member in the district is diagnosed with COVID, a blanket announcement will not be going out to all staff and all parents. The only time you will be notified is if your child is directly impacted by either exposure or by an active case of COVID. And that is to stay within the guidelines of HIPAA and FERPA. And because of privacy, we wouldn't be sharing that information. And I know it's a scary thought when you have someone that has been within the school community that has been diagnosed with COVID. But we also have to keep in mind that people have privacy, and we have to keep to that. But and you will receive a phone call. It would never be a text message or an email. And we are contracting with a former retired health nurse, school nurse. And so she is going to support us in making those phone calls and guiding us through that process. Responding to positive tests among staff and students. Once again, we have to follow the local public health department guidelines, and they will identify and they will walk us through us, and they will help us through that process. And then we must collect the contact information of any close contacts of the affected individual from 2 days before he or she showed symptoms to the time he or she is present at school. So that will be part of our challenge as we move forward. Food service, gathering, and extracurricular activities. There is only one requirement, and that's prohibit indoor assemblies that bring together students of more than one classroom. So, for example, the fifth graders would not be able to assemble together for a presentation. They are recommending that be done virtually if at all possible. If cafeterias are used, seating should be 6 feet apart, and at the high school level and the middle school level, we will be able to do that. Elementary students will stay in their cohort, so they will be eating in their classroom. Large scale of assemblies of 50 or more are suspended. Off-site field trips are suspended, and recess outside with social distancing, and students remain in their cohort. So students will go to recess, but one of the details that has not been worked out is what will they look like? Will it be 4 classes going out at the same time, going to 4 separate sections? Will it be 1 class at a time? And that's something that the principals will work out as they go through the details of how this is going to be implemented. Cleaning. Frequently touched surfaces have to undergo cleaning every 4 hours. One of our challenges is who will complete that cleaning? And so we are now challenged we have our custodial staff who have their everyday duties just to run a building. But now will we schedule the custodians a little different? How will we get that 4-hour cleaning done? Computer labs, art rooms, anything hands-on must be cleaned after every class. We have to wipe down desk after every class period. With your elementary, it's at the end of the day. Playground structures, they need to have undergo normal routine cleaning, but it's not necessary to use a disinfectant. And then we have to store our cleaning materials and make sure that they are away from students in well-vented places. Our custodial staff must wear gloves, surgical masks, and face shields when performing cleaning activities. That will be very important to protect them as well. Athletics, we must comply with all guidelines of the MHSSA. We are waiting. They are coming out, I believe, again on the 20th with more updates on what the fall year will look like as far as sports go, but we have to have proper hand techniques, cleaning technique before every practice. All equipment must be disinfected. Spectators are allowed, but they must wear facial coverings and and stand 6 feet apart. And every participant must have a clearly marked water bottle for their own water. They cannot be sharing. Indoor weight rooms using shared equipment will be suspended. Large-scale indoor events are suspended, and large-scale outdoor spectator stadium events are limited to 100 people with 6 feet of social distancing unless they are in the same household. So a family can sit together. Busing. We have to provide and require hand sanitizer before you enter a bus. The driver, the monitor, the students must wear facial coverings. The bus has to be cleaned and disinfected after every route. And what that means is that when in the mornings, we have a high school, middle school run, the high school and middle school students are on the same run, the buses would no longer be able to leave the middle school to pick up the elementary. A new bus route will have to be developed to take those students, because the other buses must remain here at the middle school so that they can be disinfected. Frequently touched surfaces before and after school must be cleaned on the buses. And if a student is, we have to have a plan to create for students who are not able to ride the bus home because they are sick. We have to have a plan in place what it will look like. We are very fortunate when students are sick, and we call parents. If parents cannot pick that child immediately, especially when they're sick, we always have a grandparent, an aunt, and uncle. Somebody will come and pick up students. So we are fortunate for that. Same thing if the first one. And then weather permitting, we have to consider opening the windows while cleaning the vehicles. And if weather permitting, we have to consider opening the windows while the vehicle is in motion. And the last one of the questions that was addressed tonight about a 504, the medically vulnerable students and staff. It is imperative that we review those care plans for students with special health care needs, students that are on 504s, and to make sure that we're just decreasing their risk of exposure, and also to help self-identify those students. You may have a child that you need to bring to our attention that we are concerned because of a severe illness. Same thing with staff. And we will we will make sure we have a plan in place to request for alternative learning arrangements if that is at all necessary. We will be able to do that. We're working very closely with our special ed department and our special ed director, and we will be meeting on that tomorrow to discuss students that choose remote learning. How will we get their services to them? How will those services be met? So those are the requirements to open school, and we believe that we have thoroughly thought this through, and we can bring students back at the elementary every day for 5 days a week, because we are going to expand the space in which they learn. It won't, maybe not the traditional classroom. It may be 2 classrooms together. It may be the media center. It may be a collaborative space. But by giving more learning space in the classroom, we will be able to better socially distance those students. And at the high school, you will have 2 teams of students returning, one Monday, Wednesday, and Monday, Tuesday, and every other Wednesday, and the other team will come Thursday, Friday, and every other Wednesday. So you will have half the students in the classroom and half the students in a building. The high school classrooms are basically all set up with desks spaced apart by 6 feet. So we are confident that we can social distance, we can clean appropriately. When you get your template, there are 4 pages of cleaning protocols. And before the school year starts, parents will receive, and our plan is to put it in the parent portal, you will receive the protocols for what it looks like if we have an active case of COVID, if we have exposure to COVID, what steps are being taken, how is that going to be handled? So there will be no surprises. It will be laid out for you. We will have the protocol for cleaning, what gets cleaned, how often does it get cleaned. And there are a few other protocols that we will have for you, so that before we go into the school year, our hope is that you have the confidence in this district to educate your children in an environment that is as safe as possible and as safe as we can make it. At this time, I don't know if you have any questions about the requirements. If not, I can turn it over to Audrey, and Audrey is going to address the actual learning plan that goes into this bigger umbrella.
So Joanne, I only have 4 slides, and good evening, everyone. But if you could just keep advancing them for me, Joanne, I would appreciate it.
I can do that.
Thank you. Good evening, everyone, and everybody watching from home. I'm glad to share this with you today. I'd like to reiterate what Kelly said at the beginning of the meeting, that this is our vision moving forward and not our complete plan. And we do understand that there are many, many details that are so very important to the safety of our students that will not be mentioned here today, that are a part of our broader procedures moving forward. What I would like to speak to today are our options for elementary and our secondary students. And as you can see in front of you, I am focusing today on a phase 4. As many of you know, if our county is in a phase 1 through 3, our students will be all virtual. And if our county is in a phase 5 through 6, we're going to be moving out of a hybrid model and we're entering into post-pandemic time. I'm focusing on the phase 4 today because that is where we have the most choice around our student learning. And I would say the most planning goes into that phase. So we're going to focus on that tonight. So in elementary, our families will have 2 options. They can choose a virtual learning environment for their child where their child would be completely at home. And with this option, they would have to commit for 1 trimester. And the other option for elementary students would be students in school with precautions in place, many of which Joanne already spoke to today, and I hope to go in a little more detail in the slides ahead. In secondary, much the same. There will be a virtual learning option for our secondary students. Slightly different, those students would need to commit for a full semester opposed to a trimester, and or using a hybrid model of an alternate schedule for social distancing in school. So that would be the other option for a phase 4. You could push it forward, please. Going over the elementary virtual learning plan for phase 4, again, just an overview. Remember, these are students who their families choose for them to stay home. They feel that's the safest, best learning environment for them. Students will be assigned an elementary certified Grosse Ile Township Schools teacher for all their teaching and learning. This would be learning assistance, monitoring those students, assessments, check-ins, everything that goes to a full, robust learning environment virtually with a Grosse Ile Township Schools teacher. They would be receiving all their same subjects: reading, writing, math, science, social studies, elementary specials. Those would all be provided in a virtual environment. And a multi-grade level elementary virtual classroom is probable. And let me speak to that a little bit. Depending on what our numbers are and how many families choose this option for their students depends on what grade levels that teacher would be responsible for. If we only have 2 first grade students who are going virtual, it would be difficult to have a teacher to service 2 students. So we may have some multi-grade level classrooms, but do know that the learning would be individualized for those students. We are using a new learning management system, and that is happening right now. We're in the process of rolling this out and committing teacher training to Schoology. And in Schoology, teachers will be able to upload videos of themselves teaching. Students can take assessment on this learning management system. They can pull from other websites. It integrates seamlessly with Google, which many of us are familiar with, helping our own students in the past months at the end of the school year. So Schoology will be a way for our districts, systems-wide, K-12, to have a learning management environment where it's all the same. It'll be one login, seamless for our parents, which will make it much easier moving forward. What is great about Schoology is this isn't just during the pandemic. We will use Schoology moving forward. This is something that our students can use while they're in class, and it needs to be noted that great virtual and great in-person instruction can happen while students are also using digital technology in the classroom, and Schoology will help do that. Very important with our virtual learning option for elementary is that learning will be differentiated for students, and that's a large focus. When we went into the last plan, we needed to make sure our kids were safe, they felt cared for, they were in an environment where for our elementary students, they were comfortable. We wanted to make sure everyone was healthy. We do need to keep that focus, but continue to push forward our rigor in education. And that's why small group and individualized instruction will be so very important this time. And so we want our teachers focusing on that. When you're meeting with students one-on-one, that Zoom call isn't just a quick check-in and what did you do the last 5 days, which our kids really benefited from. But now it's going to be small reading groups, show me your writing, face-to-face Zooms. And like I said in the previous slide, families will need to commit to this virtual option for a trimester. Due to staffing, it's near impossible for us to have students moving in and out of this mid trimester and switching teachers and classrooms. So we will have parents commit for that try. Go ahead, please. And then elementary in-person learning phase 4. And Joanne has spoke to this a bit today, but I'm going to go into a little more detail. After walking buildings, after having many conversations with principals, we feel very confident and comfortable knowing that we can place our students in the classrooms that they are in larger square foot areas in order to bring students back Monday through Friday with social distancing. A regular elementary classroom can be tight for, let's say, 25 students, but moving those same students in the collaborative space makes this much more achievable. By looking at our spaces and having these many conversations, we know that putting in Park Lane, our young fives, our kindergartens, our first and some of our seconds in that building would fit. In Meridian, we would put some 2, 3, and then 4, and then our 5th graders at Grosse Ile Middle School. I also need to reiterate that these students will be in cohorts, so they will not be intermingling with their grade level. If you have a student that is in 3rd grade, they come in the day, they come to that 3rd grade classroom, and that is where they stay with those 25 kids all day long. So even our students at Grosse Ile Middle School, I think it is very important to mention that our 5th graders will not be intermingling, having lunch, walking the hallways with our 6th, 7th, and 8th grade students. They will be staying in that classroom all day, just like they would be at Meridian, but in a large room at the middle school. Joanne focused on this earlier in the meeting, talking about masks, but you can read on the screen now that we will be having students wear masks while entering the school, while walking out of the classroom. If they had to go to the office for some reason, they would be wearing a mask. And in those first 14 days, we will also require them to wear the mask in school as well. Moving out of those 14 days though, while walking amongst the school, while being in the hallway, masks will still need to be up on those students. That would be reevaluating and looking at, if they're in their desk, socially distanced, could they take their mask down? All right, you can move it forward. So next I'd like to talk about secondary virtual learning, which is a little bit different than our elementary virtual learning. We are fortunate to have Michigan Virtual as an area that we can look at for our secondary students. It would be very difficult for us to have our Grosse Ile teachers teach our students who choose a virtual option because they go to multiple classes all day, and those teachers will be teaching our in-person learning. So students would be assigned to a Michigan Virtual schedule for online learning, and those classes are taught by Michigan Virtual staff. Now, the Michigan Virtual staff, they are still highly qualified Michigan certified teachers, but they are not Grosse Ile Township Schools teachers. We would still have a teacher of record on those students where they can check in with logs and see how they're participating, but they would be instructed by a Michigan Virtual teacher. Michigan Virtual does not award credit or diplomas, but students receive completion certificates, and Grosse Ile Township Schools does recognize those certificates. And if a student chose Michigan Virtual, they would still graduate from Grosse Ile High School. We would award credit and diplomas for those students. For this option, families will need to commit for a full semester. Once we are in, they are committed to those courses. Their teachers may be working at a different pace than our teachers in class. It might look a little different. They might get on a different chapter. And so they would need to stay the course until their classes change and we are into a new semester. And then last, the choice for secondary would be in-person learning. And you've heard us use the words hybrid model for this, and Joanne talked about that as well, that is rotating in-person virtual instruction. So we would have students on a red schedule, Monday, Tuesday, and every other Wednesday in person, and then Thursday and Friday virtual, and then the gray schedule would be the opposite, Thursday, Friday, and every other Wednesday, and then Monday and Tuesday virtual. We are looking at this option for our secondary students because class sizes would be reduced and they would provide more social distancing. So our custodians have been wonderful, and at the high school, they already have some classrooms set up so we could see what that would look like, filling a whole classroom with desks to make sure that we could cover half of them and still have social distancing between all the students that would be coming on that day, and then moving and seeing how that could look for the students that would come in the next day. And as part of the executive order, students would be required to wear masks in grades 6 through 12. And I think that's where I'm gonna leave it. And Joanne, give it back to you.
Okay, that concludes the overall arching vision of the plan and all of the requirements that the Governor's Advisory Council has recommended as requirements that we must do. And in most cases, and you will see as you go through the template, we go above and beyond in the cleaning area, the disinfecting, and a couple other areas. And the details of the plan will, once you approve a plan, then the administration, though they've already started the preliminary work, they will be working diligently, probably hitting the ground next Wednesday morning to get the details out so that we can get them to parents as quickly as possible. Some of the questions we don't have answers to at this time, and that's not an answer that would come from my office. It would come from the building principals as they prepare to start the year with their students and their protocols and their procedures. And I want to give accolades to Audrey and the administrative team. She has led them through this. It's not been easy. It's every day, all day, weekends and nights. Everybody's been working very hard. I appreciate more than anything, parents that are in the audience, your patience. Those of you that I've talked on the phone have been very understanding. This is not easy for anyone. This is very emotional for all of us. But we believe that we can bring back elementary students safely all day, every day, and bring our high school students in. It's so important for kids to have that personal contact. They want to see their friends. They want to be with their friends. They want to have some normalcy in their lives. And we believe that we will be able to do that. So with that being said, we're open to any questions. The entire administrative team is here this evening. So if you have any questions and we can field them, we will. If not, Audrey and I will do our best to answer your questions.
Joanne, one thing, just to tag on what you said, I know that there is some frustration with parents because they want all the answers right away. But what they didn't understand, and hopefully that tonight's presentation will help them to understand, is that there's been a lot of months, a lot of energy that has gone into this plan. And I, for one, as a board member, didn't want this decision or plan rushed in a hasty, quick decision, because as Dan said earlier, we're not a one-size-fits-all district. We're a district that is trying to meet the needs of multiple parents and families' needs. We've all fielded some calls from different views on different people. So I just wanted to say thank you for taking the time for that. As far as, and Audrey, maybe you can answer this, when you're speaking about the high school that is going to be totally virtual through Michigan Virtual, I think it's important to note that we have used this program for many, many years with our students on specific classes that have not been offered before. And typically in the past, we've had a high school teacher that has been a mentor for that student for that specific class. Would that still be happening?
Yes, that's exactly what would happen.
Okay, thank you.
So, hi guys, this is Kelly. I just have a question. What is the teaching and the support staff's perception about going back to school? Have we polled that, the cohort, and gotten their input on the plan?
The teachers, you mean?
The support staff.
The support staff, they were surveyed a couple weeks ago. Overwhelmingly, when asked if they felt comfortable coming back, overwhelming, I would say 93%, maybe 92% said they were coming back. They had some concerns, and the concerns were things that are being addressed in the plan, like students wearing masks, the social distancing piece, what happens if I contract COVID, what does that look like for me as an employee and my benefits? Those things were, things of that nature. but I believe it was about 2 weeks ago, overwhelmingly, the teachers were returning. We have a few that still have some reservations, and we're going to reach out next week to those individuals. But, you know, at the end of last year, when we were in a virtual environment and they were working from home, they wanted to be back in their classrooms, and teachers wanted to be with their students. And I think that's the part that, you know, was so hard for them to be away from their students. So now I'm hearing they want to come back, they want to be with their students, but we all have reservations. Every day I come to work, you know, it's like, I wonder if anybody went somewhere last night.
Yeah.
In the environment, did they go to the grocery store and pick it up and bring it back to central office? But you know, I can't think like that as the leader of the district, but it's in the back of all of our minds. And I don't think there's a person on this meeting tonight that doesn't feel that way. And I think everybody's a little scared.
Yeah, I mean, I get it. I'm in Virginia right now for the first time, and it was scary getting on a plane and coming to a hotel. So the other question I had on the plan was the notification if someone has COVID. So are we saying that if someone tests positive, we're not going to notify the parents in that classroom?
Yes. Oh, yes, you would be notified. But what I'm saying is that parents have asked, will the district parents be notified of any case that has been diagnosed? And the answer to that was no. But if it's your child's classroom, absolutely.
So similar to how we notify for lice or strep.
Yes,
or something
absolutely,
like that.
absolutely. But this time it will be very personal. They will get a personal phone call.
Okay, great.
Joanne or Audrey, can you hear me okay?
Yes.
Perfect. So I just want to make sure that I'm understanding the secondary part correct. So you have, let's call it the grade going to school in person Monday, Tuesday, and every other Wednesday, then doing virtual Thursday, Friday, correct?
That's correct.
And then it's flip-flop with the red doing virtual Monday, Tuesday, every other Wednesday, and in person Thursday, Friday. So, and this might sound like a silly question, but does that mean that each group is off every other Wednesday? So they have one day off?
So every other Wednesday, they will be in school. If they're not in school, they'll be learning in a virtual environment.
Got it. Okay. Got it. Thank you.
I have a question, and it was from a parent. Will we be still doing the delayed starts as usual on the Mondays? Because then the kids, especially in middle and high school, that have the in-person learning on Mondays would get less instruction than the ones that go Thursday and Friday. So that you don't have to answer that now, but that's a question that I was asked. Are we going to have delayed starts as before, and how is that going to work?
Well, I can't really answer that question because one of the dilemmas that we're struggling with right now is we are waiting for the legislation to determine if they are going to, we know they're going to count the number of days as 180, but the clock hours. We're hoping to get some variance in the clock hours, and that will determine, once we know the clock hours that we have to, right now, currently, it's 1,098 hours and 180 days. And in the crazy world of pupil accounting, hours don't equate to days. So once the legislation works that through and we know what that requirement is, then we'll go back and look at, okay, how much time do we need, and the professional development piece that they're also looking at up in Lansing. So we're waiting for a lot of guidance and waivers from the state of Lansing school, seat time waivers, whether or not they are going to waive the standardized testing, state testing, the MyStep, M-Step. We know that we have to give kindergartners, there's a new program out there where we have to assess our kindergartners within the first, is it 30 days of school, Audrey?
Yes, there's a new assessment this year that's mandated for all kindergarten students called the KRA, the Kindergarten Readiness Assessment. And we are still in the midst of all this training our teachers how to teach our kids in a virtual environment and do all of these other things that we have to do. We're also trying to figure out training days and training trainers for the KRA. So it's interesting that we are doing all of this but life's still going on underneath. We're still having to do all the other things that we would normally be doing to open a school year. And that's what makes it very challenging. And to think that we're going to be assessing our kindergartners within the first 30 days is very interesting, but required.
And especially for districts that have chosen to go virtual, how's that going to look? So we're waiting for a lot of decisions to be made in Lansing as well for some of the things that we need to implement.
Yeah, I think that's really important for parents to realize that sometimes their questions are not getting answered, and it's because we have to wait for the state guidelines before we can even consider what our answer is going to be. You know, a lot of the questions that parents might have in their mind, you may not know the answer to till the middle of August, till the guidelines come out. So I think patience is required on every angle. And I wasn't expecting an answer to that, but I thought I'd throw it out there since it was a question that someone had asked me.
I appreciate that. Thank you.
Another question for you, Joanne or Audrey. So we talked about wanting to screen the students, you know, when they enter the building, correct?
Mm-hmm.
Each day. Logistically, how are we going to do that when you know, the groups of students come in such packs, right? And you're getting 5, 10, 15 kids coming in all at the same time. How do we propose that we're going to be able to do that and keep people separated? I mean, to me, it sounds like the start of the day would get pushed back and you'd have people waiting outside, or how does that look?
Well, those are one of the things that is a detail that has not been specifically worked out. There was a committee that met, made up of buildings, basically the building secretaries, our health occupation teachers. Right. That was the concerns they had, how that would look. So when you approve a plan, then we will move forward and, okay, how will that logistically, what will that look like?
And I think it's important to note, these things have been talked about. We have run through every scenario on that and talked and then talked some more. But we still need that stamp of approval, and then we will say, this is the way.
Mm-hmm.
Got it.
You know, and this is a difficult time for all of us, and we're all going to have to step up, and we're all going to be asked to do something at one point or time between now and probably December that really we've never been asked to do before, or we don't see it as our role. But our roles are going to change a little bit because we're here to make sure that kids stay safe, that staff, the teacher teaching next to me is safe, the secretary down the hall is safe, the administrator in the office next to me is safe. So what is it that I need to do? What is it that we all need to do? So it might look different. We don't want kids coming into the building and standing there. It kind of defeats the whole purpose. So we have to streamline that, and it might look a little different for every building. Luckily, we have doors, multi-entrances in all of the buildings, and we may have to utilize that. Which will change the drop-off. That will change the drop-off. But, you know, we already have a plan in place to work on the traffic flow, and how will that work?
Can I ask a question? So for the virtual learning and the switching and stuff like that, do we already have cameras in the classrooms for teachers, or is that going to be a purchase for us, or how's that going to work?
Nope, we're already all set to go.
Okay. And then for the high school and middle school, other than 3 days / 2 days a week I'm going to be watching on my computer, are all my assignments identical timing, everything else, or that's a detail yet to be completed?
I mean, yes, they will be. It may be a little bit synchronous, it may be a little bit asynchronous, and that is the detail that actually I was talking with Mr. Szymanski on half hour before this meeting. But the learning will look the same for those students. But that's not to say that if something happens with a student and they need to log into their Schoology account and do their math class at a different time because of an emergency, that we wouldn't accept that. So that is a detail, but the learning would be the same.
And then for those parents who choose not to send it all, it would just be identical, except they would be watching it all day long. I mean, watching it all day, every day of the week.
Parents who choose not to send it all, those students would be in Michigan virtual. So their learning would look different because it would be a Michigan virtual teacher. It
Okay.
is still the standards that we are required to teach, but it would be a Michigan virtual account.
Okay.
Okay, do we have any more questions?
I just have one more. Would it be
Sure,
possible
no, it's fine.
to see the survey results from both the parents and teachers before we vote on the plan? Just the questions that were asked and the responses?
Sure.
Thank you.
I've got one more question also. Joanne, is it possible to email the board this slide deck that we did? So, we've got a week to kind of think about this and review the plan, but this way we have some notes to go back over and review.
What would you like?
It's in your board book, Scooter.
It's in your board book.
It is in the board book. Okay.
Yeah, and then you will get also the template that looks like this. That's probably 50 pages. It has just taking the requirements and putting them in there under all of the sections. But it's kind of hard to follow because we had to fill it out for phases 1 through 6. But
Okay.
phase 4, what we presented tonight is in the template document that gets turned over to the state. No, it's this one, I'm sorry. That's our thing. It's going to look like this is our document. So you'll get a copy of this. We have a few more things we're ironing out and we'll get put in there and send it to you. But you have this for your notes here.
Perfect. Thank you.
Dan, can I ask one more question?
Of course, that's what this is all about.
For the secondary students, if they're, regardless of if they're in the red or grade group, will they be actually switching classes like they normally did? And how, I guess, could you please consider how the cleaning protocol will happen if they, as they go from first hour to second hour, if they're switching classrooms? That seems like it'd be a big undertaking given the requirements.
We have to still switch classrooms, and all of that we have had discussion over, markings in the hallway, one-way traffic, how the cleaning will happen between each instructional hour.
That's more of what I would
come through and clean.
Yeah. I mean, I think the hallway thing is pretty easy to solve. I mean,
yeah.
You put dots on the floor and arrows, but I think, the actual sanitizing of the classrooms that's a lot of work.
Joanne, one other thing, I think you talked about, we have to vote on this next week. And then after that, there was the potential of doing a kind of a Zoom parent meeting. Is that still a plan?
Yes, in fact, we talked about that a little bit today, how that would look and how it would be most effective for parents and most meaningful. And this is currently, we're talking about doing it maybe by level instead of K through 12, because the questions at the elementary are a lot different than maybe secondary. So we may be dividing that up. I'll be meeting with the principals and we're going to figure out what is the best way to do that, to deliver that to parents.
So to clarify so if you have those kind of level meetings, then how long after that what's the timeline? Would parents commit within a week later? I know a lot of districts are making their parents commit this week or next week.
We are hoping, I know that the elementary principals were reaching out to their parents that had opted for online and had conversations with them. I have not touched base with them yet. We will be doing that tomorrow. And then we're looking for parents to commit by August 14th or 15th, because we have to staff these remote classes. And so it may change our staffing a little bit. We won't know that till we know the number of students. Something that Audrey mentioned earlier is that if you had 2 students in second grade, you're not going to assign a teacher to 2 students to do remote learning. So it might be first and second together. It might be kindergarten first, second and third, then fourth and fifth. So it will all be determined on the number of students. We had a relatively high number of parents, approximately 68 elementary parents that opted in the survey. So it'll be interesting to see if we still have 68 or if we have more after the presentation and after the board approves a plan. So it's important that we have that information from parents by the 15th, and that communication will go out once a plan is approved, the board has to approve, and I think that's the hard part, is the board has to approve this plan or another plan or something different, but a plan has to be approved before we can then carry it out, implement that plan. So, and you need a week, you need time to look it over. You need time to ask questions. You'll look this over, you'll have 100 other questions tomorrow and the next day and the next day. And that's great, because the better we can give you, the more information than we can give you, the better decision you can make on, is this the right plan for the students of Grosse Ile Township schools?
Okay.
Well, as a parent, I appreciate the work that has gone into it, and that you've provided options and not a one-size-fits-all approach. Like, I think it's great that we're respecting the decision. If parents feel more comfortable being remote, they can be remote. And if they're comfortable sending their kids to school, they have the option to send their kids to school. So I'm very appreciative of the ability as a parent to choose what I feel is best as a parent for my children. And it can be different for both of my kids. So thank you.
You're welcome. And I think it's important to keep in mind that, the things are not trending well in the state. And the governor at any time between now and the start of the year could move us to a phase 3. And if we get moved to phase 3, we become a remote model. Everyone in the state becomes a remote model. And that will make a lot of people very unhappy. But it's a decision that had to be made. And so we know that when the governor closed us in the fall, and she stated that it was enrichment, it was supplemental, it wasn't counting, it wasn't graded, you weren't getting credit for it, the mindset was a little different. This has to be more robust, because we're delivering new instruction, new materials. Students are graded, students are assessed, credit is given. And so it has to be taken a lot more serious on everybody's part. So, I predict that we're going to be moving in and out of phases as the year goes on. And my hope is we get to a 5 sooner than later. But, we can't bank on that. So we all have to be patient, and we have to be flexible, and we have to move among these plans as best we can. And we had a huge conversation about transitions. So if she puts us in a phase 3 on a Friday, what does Monday look like? Schoolology is going to be great, because all of our teachers will be trained in the same platform. And there's only one login, so parents aren't, trying to log into 4 or 5 different things. And we're trying to make it as easy as possible, because we know we will be moving back and forth.
I guess I want to add too, I know parents get impatient, and I've been reading some of the comments that are coming in as they're coming in. And, one says, we're kind of late to the game. Well, that's not true. We cannot be late to the game, because we have to follow what the governor says and what the rules are. And if we don't get the rules, then we can't make our plans. So we're in really a catch-22. We've been out of school since March. But, the latest regulations that came down last week. So we certainly couldn't have made a plan in June when we didn't have the parameters with which to make the plan. And
but you're right. You know what, Kylie, you're right. And we could have made the plan and been like other districts and changed our plan and changed our plan and changed our plan.
Or had a one-size-fits-all plan.
I am very thankful that we didn't rush. I'm sorry about the frustration out there. But at some point, other districts are giving 3 days for them to make the choice once the plan is announced, without any details at all. No Zoom meeting, it's a board meeting. And so I'm sorry, all the answers are not going to come at once. And sometimes you have to trust that there's enough people and that we're going to follow the proper guidelines to keep your children safe. We take this very seriously. Every one of us will lose sleep over this at night. So, moving forward, that's why I've gotten many, many phone calls about people wanting their children in school. They're concerned about mental health. And on that same note, we have other people that don't feel comfortable. I respect both ideas. And so that's why I think it is important that we continue on giving options. And if you don't feel safe, keep your kid home. If you're worried about the social emotional aspect, you want your kids to go, send them. I mean, we're giving more option, I think, on this plan than a lot of other districts have taken the easy way out, doing, as Kelly said, the one size, you know, we're not doing the one size fits all. We could just go easy, virtual, or easy, we'll just bringing you back in. There's other districts I know that are doing, they're bringing students in, they're not doing 6 foot spacing. They're bringing everybody in every day, all day. Okay, so, you know, I think from just listening to this now, I'm sure I'll have some more questions, but I think it's really a nice compromise in meeting both the needs of different sides of parents and keeping the students safe. So.
Any more questions then?
I have a procedural
You and your
question.
team for putting a lot of effort into this. I know you spent a lot of time, the whole task force spent a lot of time. It's greatly appreciated. I want to jump on Suzanne's ideas that this is giving people options, which I think is appreciated. I know there's a lot of details that aren't there yet. They will be coming forward with that. Again, as the board, it was more the vision, the big picture that we're looking at. There's been a lot of great questions that have come through during the presentation. I will have those all passed on to the administration to be able to look at that. We plan on having a town hall Zoom. As Joanne said, it might be done with different categories of schools, but that'll be forthcoming. Information will be forthcoming on that if this plan is approved next week. Yet that's still yet to be decided what the board decides. And so the board will have to ask their own questions on that. If the community has additional questions, and I'm sure they do, they can email the superintendent and see if they can roll that in part of the town hall and get those questions answered as the details get worked out. Many of those small details are going to be worked out by the principal and not through the administration. So we're just going to hang in there and do the best we can to get the information out as quick as we got it. It's difficult for all of us. We understand that.
John had a question.
Yeah,
Oh.
I was going to ask, so procedurally, Joanne, if we have questions, should we email you and copy Dan?
Absolutely, yes.
But we
Please.
should, okay.
I think
Or if
there's
you
gonna
want
be
to,
more
if you want to send them to Dan, Dan can gather them all up and just forward them to me. That'd probably be easier.
Okay.
Right, Dan?
I just
Is that
wanted to
okay
know
with
what-
you?
That's fine. Absolutely fine.
Okay.
Happy to do that. Scooter, you had something you want to say?
No, I was just going to say, I think after the presentation tonight, there's definitely amongst the board going to be more questions.
Sure.
After we sit back. So while we might not have all the questions right now, I definitely think, kind of like the sentiment was echoed by John also, just we'll put our questions together and we'll send them over and we'll get the answers that we're looking for.
Exactly. And that's same with the community too. You get your questions together. We'll do our best to answer those either in a question and answer forum or online or during the town hall. All right. We ready to move on, or do we have any more questions? I want to make sure everybody here on the board gets an opportunity to ask anything or say anything they want. All right, that's the presentation for now. We're going to move into action items. That's okay. We have one action item on the agenda. Does anybody, we have a motion for that, please?
Hang on.
I'm going too quick for you.
I move that the Grosse Ile Township Schools Board of Education approves the personnel update as presented. It is in essence layoffs for food service, certain food service personnel, transportation, special ed, and some other positions that in this that we unfortunately have to consider in light of our circumstances.
A motion, to have support?
Support.
Support, motion to support. Any discussion?
Yeah, Dan, if I can, so Joanne, so we're keeping class sizes relatively the same. And with, maybe Linda, you better address this. So we're losing approximately $685 per student is the current proposal, or what we've been told.
Yes, that we're hearing about 650 for this school year.
So
For
give or
the
take.
2021 school year.
So $650 per student times approximately 1,800 students. That's a little over $1 million that we are losing with no corresponding And then on top of that, we have additional expenditures for the COVID. And even though the CARES Act provides money to to school districts, it's based on free and reduced lunch, and for which we don't get too much for, correct?
Correct. We, just for the public, just to clarify, we received $68,000 in CARES money based on our free and reduced. We have spent well over $75,000, so that comes out of our general fund.
And that was in the fiscal year ending this past June, let alone the one that's ended in June of 2021, what we're going to have to spend.
Correct.
Joanne, typically with this, maybe you could expand on this motion a little bit. And really this, typically in the past, excuse me, many years ago, this was a contractual statement that we had to do, notify just in case. So for example, if we go to phase 3 again, correct, and we're not in school and totally virtual, that's when this could be potentially effective, correct?
Correct. So if we go into phase 3 and we are all virtual, we have support staff that would not be working, and we would have to find meaningful work, and we can't find meaningful work if we're not here. And so contractually, because they're all under collective bargaining agreements, contractually we have to notify them 30 days. So their letters are written that if we are going in person by September 1st, then they would come back as needed. So it's just, we have to do it contractually because we have to give a 30-day notice. We don't know if we're going to be remote or not. So if by September 1st we are not remote, we know we're going to be going back in person. If you approve this plan, then we would call those folks back to start the school year.
Okay. And so this is a savings of approximately, do you know how much? If we were not in school.
Between 450, I believe, and $500,000.
Okay.
And that's for the full school year?
That's for the full
year,
school year.
correct.
That's for the full school
So
year.
if we're only out for a couple of weeks, it's obviously significantly less.
Well,
Correct.
yeah, but if we're, yeah, but who knows? I mean, yeah,
Well, yeah, that's the thing, we don't know.
right.
No, but the problem, of course, is that we have to file a contract, and if there's any chance at all that we have to lay anybody off, even if we're not sure who it would be, we have to give notice. So we use a wide net to do that.
Mhm.
Possibility of anybody being laid off, we have to give them notice. We will. Doesn't mean they're going to be laid off. Doesn't mean at all that. It just means we followed the contract.
Right. And I do think
Yeah.
if they close us down and we are down to virtual, it's not going to be a couple of weeks because it's got to be more than 14 days. They're not going to flip schools into virtual and then flip them back open we haven't gotten out of a phase that quickly yet anyway.
Right.
I don't think it's going to happen that way. If we go backwards, they're going to be very precautionary again. Hopefully it doesn't happen. Hopefully that doesn't happen. Because we've always taken a lot of value in our support staff, and we value them greatly. But contractually, we have to make them aware to be fair at this time.
So to Suzanne's point, if we go back virtually, we can call parapros and support staff like that back on an ad hoc basis to support the teachers and give the support, more importantly, to the students who need it when we're in a virtual environment.
Absolutely. If we have to, we can, yes.
Okay.
And that holds true especially like for our inclusionary parapros, because they help support the teacher reaching out to those students. So that would be a case where, we may have to call them back because they need the children need that support.
Right.
So it's all dependent. It's a matter of what is the need, and then we would call those folks back.
Sure, and it makes sense to me. We have a lot of, we have to balance our fiscal responsibility given the tremendous state budget cuts coming our way and the lack of funding for PPE and, making our schools safe if we go back. But then at the same time, I want to make sure the students are getting the support and the teachers are getting the support that they need. So definitely a tough decision, but I understand why we're discussing it.
Right.
Yeah, I want to piggyback and just, I've struggled with this personally. I understand the fiscal responsibility part, and doing it contractually. I fully get, I had all the information that was necessary. Personally, and this is just my 2 cents, is I struggle with it. We're dealing with, the careers of some of these people, and coming from somebody who uses the parapros and has used them with my daughters, and it's very tough. I fear that if we were to do layoffs, that we might lose some of these very valuable assets that we have, and all of these, in the transportation and the food services and the parapros, that they might go out and find jobs elsewhere. And then when the time comes that we do need them back, we're going to be struggling to try to fill those positions in areas where we're already having a hard time, filling some of these positions. So I just want to say that I really struggled with this one. I understand it from both sides. I fully do. I just have had a hard time with this one.
You know what, Scooter, I totally understand. My first year on the board, I walked in, and I don't know if Michelle Behringer's watching, but she was pink slipped and she was pregnant. And I saw her and I burst into tears. And the good thing here, this is a little different situation, but we've pink slipped many, many, many years contractually, just in case, because sometimes numbers didn't look right. And most years we've always been able to bring them back. We've kind of had a change of philosophy in the last few years, like we try not to do it at all. And we've been very lucky not to. This COVID is a little bit of a different situation. It is an emotional thing. You do have a loyalty. We love these people. They're part of our community. They're part of our family. But I think most of them have been around long enough to know that if we can bring them back, we're bringing them back. Okay? We will bring them back.
Amen.
Yes.
I mean, how do I put this? No one wants to do this, but with our lack of funding, reduced funding, increased expenditures, let's hope things turn around, that maybe we don't have to spend so much and we can and we do go back to school and we can put a lot of these people back on our dole.
Anyone?
Can I just add something?
Sure.
I talked with the 3 union presidents this morning. Kim Winters and I did, and they totally understand, and they kind of expected it. They said, because they're hearing all of these schools are going back virtually, and they know that last spring they were home, and they get it, and they were going to share with their members that, if we are in person, they will be back. So just hang in there. But it's contractual. We have to notify them by their CBA, and that's what we're doing. We have to be fiscally responsible. I'm waiting for Linda Driska. She's at the Township Hall to give us an update on the results of today's renewal. I mean, if that doesn't pass, we have a $2.4 million hole we have to fill. So
I didn't leave yet.
Oh, you didn't leave yet. Oh, I thought you were going. Oh, sorry, Linda. Okay. So we won't get our update till later.
Want to add that the one good thing about this, that it's not a long period of time. It's basically a month till school opens. So
Correct.
We're going to know very shortly whether it's going to be, I can't even imagine the governor calling all virtual a couple of days before school opens, when everyone submitted their plan. So I do think that it's a short period of time, and I think that's a good thing, that they're going to know if we're back in the classroom, if this plan is approved and we go with kids in school, everyone will be back to work.
From your mouth to God's ears, Callie. The last time was Thursday and we're closing tomorrow. I think.
Yes, exactly.
And so for the record, this doesn't take place until September 8th anyway, so
Correct,
it's not
correct.
immediately effective. We have
No,
until September
no.
8th, and a lot of things will change, and hopefully we will be back in school sooner rather than later.
Correct.
Right. Any more comments or questions on this for the vote? All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed?
Nay.
Motion's carried. Okay. That concludes it, our meeting for tonight. If you have any questions for Joanne, the board, please pass them on to me and I'll forward to them. I see there's a lot of new questions that came under the question and answer form there. I have Robin will accumulate all those, pass them on to the superintendent. Part of when she's making up her question and answers, she can factor those in. When the town hall comes up, she can use some of those before for presentation so we know what's coming ahead. That would be good. Next week, this time, same time on Tuesday night will be the vote for this presentation. So anybody on the board has questions for me, please give me a call. For Joanne, just pass them along and I'll make sure they're all answered for you. Anything else then tonight? All right, I'm ready to adjourn. Thanks for being here.
Thank you.
Thanks, Dan.
Yep.
Hey, Robin, we got to capture these questions. You know how to do that? Okay.
I already did it, Joanne.
Thank you, Paul.
Did you get all 80 some of them, Paul? Because
I did, yes.
thank you so much, because I'm sitting here. How did you do that quickly?
It's magic.
Oh, okay. Well, thank you very much, because I'm only like halfway through, so I'll stop then. Thanks.
I'll email it to you guys.
Thank you so much.
No problem.